talk, and we have talked to them on other situations, but we can't give them full access to our product. That would be premature at this point because we haven't completed our own work.
Joining us now, one of the first reporters who broke this story, congressional reporter at the New York Times, Luke Broadwater. Also with us, former U.S. attorney and an MSNBC contributor, Barbara McQuade. Luke, we want to dig deeper into your reporting, but first, Barbara, can you just give us overall a sense, explain what this means?
I think this is a very significant development, Mika. It tells us that the Justice Department is looking at more than just the physical attack that occurred on January 6th at the Capitol, but the full scope of all of the things that the January 6th committee has been investigating. That includes aides to Mike Pence, who've talked about the pressure Donald Trump put on him to stop the certification. It includes DOJ high-level officials who were pressured by Trump to declare that there was fraud in the election. I think it indicates an expansion of the investigation. Now, I don't think it means necessarily that only now are they beginning that expansive investigation. I think they've just reached a point where they've decided it's okay to go overt. It's likely they have been doing covert investigation before now. Search warrants that are sealed to get the content of email, for example, is likely already completed, and they're now ready to proceed to this phase.
Luke, this is your reporting in the New York Times, to the point Barbara was making about where this Justice Department investigation may or may not be. There's been, as you know, frustration, both public and private, with the Justice Department not being more aggressive around January 6th. Based on your reporting, people you're talking to, what is your sense of how far along they are in looking into this?
Well, obviously, different aspects of the investigation have been moving at different paces. They're quite far along in rounding up rioters, right? There's more than 700 people who came into the Capitol that day or came onto the Capitol grounds that day who have been arrested. But what they're doing is, from my sense of it, is they're starting at January 6th and working backwards. So they started with the attack itself, and now they're starting to go back and see what led to it. And that's the work the January 6th committee has been doing for months. And so the January 6th committee has more than 1,000 interviews, and they've interviewed lots of people in lots of different aspects of the plans to overturn the election, high-ranking officials in the White House, people who are involved in the so-called fake elector scheme, all the way down to the leaders of domestic violent extremist groups. So there are many interviews here that the Justice Department would be interested in seeing, if only as maybe pre-information before they do their interviews of these same people. Perhaps it will give them some leads of where to go. But I do think it shows pretty clearly now that the Justice Department is not just focused on these rioters anymore, and they want to work their way up the food chain.
And yeah, and that's really what the core of your reporting in this new piece is, that they want the transcripts from the select committee from Trump associates, from people around Donald Trump who may have spoken to him that day, who may have planned the event on January 6th, who may have helped him try to stage the coup in the days after January 6th. Do you have any idea or any sense of who exactly the Justice Department is looking at specifically?
That's an interesting question. I don't, because the letter that was sent to the committee, which we were able to review, was pretty broad. The way I understand it, it's the sort of start of a negotiation with the committee. First, they tell them, we might want access to all of your transcripts. And the committee is going to say, well, maybe you can have access to some of them. Maybe there's some information we want from the Justice Department that will use this as a negotiating tool. And we'll give you access to this if you give us access to that. I think Benny Thompson's comments were interesting yesterday after we broke this story, because he immediately came out and said, hey, we're not turning over anything. And then we heard more from some more sources connected to the committee that this is part of a discussion, and maybe the Justice Department will get access to these interviews, but they might want something from the Justice Department in return. They have been working for many months to compile all these interviews. But I do think, the base of the Democratic Party is going to want to see a strong Justice Department investigation. And I think they will probably want the committee to turn over the interviews. So whether that happens immediately right now or in a matter of weeks or months remains to be